It's called diarrheaism.
Diarrheaism, yeah.
I might have to just say sound.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
I'm getting feedback. I'm having technical difficulties.
Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started.
Sephora stores are everywhere you are. So just pop in when you need a brown lip to match your 90s playlist, a confidence boost before your interview, or a last-minute gift for mom's birthday. There's always a Sephora near you. Just pop in. Use our store locator to find your local Sephora or Sephora at Kohl's.
This episode is brought to you by Bumble. So, you want to find someone you're compatible with, specifically someone who's ready for a serious connection, totally open to having kids in the future, is a tall, rock-climbing Libra, and loves rom-coms with vegan pizzas on Tuesdays just as much as you do. Bumble knows that you know exactly what's right for you. So whatever it is you're looking for, Bumble's features can help you find it. Date now on Bumble.
Stick on. There we go. All right, does this work? Bye.
Yes, it is working. Oh my God, this is hilarious.
What voice do you hear?
I am hearing Miss X.
All right, let me.
I love it.
Let me.
We should do half the interview as Miss X.
I'm fine with that.
This is so crazy. I love it. We are here, even though it doesn't sound like it. We're here with Daniel Hustwit, and this is his alter ego.
Yes.
So Daniel is a fellow Shockbox artist, and I'm doing this new series where I like to do stuff off the cuff. I always like to do things very improvisational, but I just texted Daniel this morning and was like, hey, you want to jump on a Zoom and get going? He said, yeah, let's do it. So this is perfect. So we're going to do an impromptu interview with Daniel. Daniel has an amazing show up at Shockbox right now. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it? You'll probably be able to describe it better than me.
It's called diarrheaism.
Diarrheaism, yeah.
I might have to just say sound.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
I'm getting feedback. I'm having technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties, yeah. And it's actually kind of hard to understand what you're saying. So let's disable it.
There we go.
I hear you perfectly now. There we go. Awesome.
All right, that works.
Yeah. It was, I don't know what it was picking up. It was like picking up some phantasmagorical thing in the background.
I'm not hitting any other buttons.
Yeah, don't touch anything else. This is take two. After we got the Mrs. X or Miss X off. Well, maybe we should start by talking about how you introduced the show with Miss X in the first place, because I thought that was really cool.
Well, yeah. So I'm having a show at Shockbox, diarrheaism, yes. But I'm having kind of two shows in one because Shockbox is configured. It's got a main gallery and then it's got kind of a back gallery.
Yes.
And I thought it would be cool to have a kind of a fake art group, a group of artists who are all fake friends,
yes,
who want to compete against this solo show. And that's kind of stems, that whole group concept stems from my irritation with artist groups that are identified not by their art at all, but just, by whatever links the group, and some writer can write about. It's a lot easier for these lazy art writers to write about the characteristics of a group of artists than it is to write about the art itself.
Or like almost like an art movement, right? Like you're talking about like an ism, like diarrhealism is the name of the show. It's kind of like your take on an art movement, correct?
Right. It's ridiculous in a way, but there hasn't been a real art. I mean, you can say postmodernism, but there hasn't been an art movement since modernism started 150 years ago. We've just kind of we've been consuming modernism, redigesting it, and diluting it. And so my whole thing is, I think right now, almost every artist, at least there's no discussion of art, but almost every artist is diluting what has happened in the past. They're not aware of what's happened in the past, and then they're kind of spewing out something that's not as powerful as the original when the original happened.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Well, and there is like, surrealism and pop surrealism and like neo-expressionism and all that shit. I always think of art in general. I love your show because it's like the over-intellectualization of art. I don't like it when people have to completely explain to me what I'm looking at and what I'm supposed to see. I understand like your process. I get that. But if you have to really tell me a 5-minute diatribe of what I'm supposed to really get from this, then I don't think you're doing your job well. And I think you're giving a little wink to the audience with that. Actually, quite a few winks to the audience with your show. It's like you put pop culture into a blender and blended it up with all these old other like masters. And what came out was just this beautiful show, which I think is one of my favorite shows I've ever seen at Shockbox. And I'm going to back up a little bit because I did say this with Miss X, but Daniel is a fellow Shockbox artist. And when did you get on the Shockbox radar?
It was great. It was during the pandemic, and it was I remember because it was 2020 was a very political year, and Fox had some sort of political show. There were two, but one it might have been called 2021 ? Or something. And I submitted,
that was actually my wife's idea. Yeah.
Then I wouldn't be here otherwise because
that's cool.
I submitted some sort of I was very angry then, and I was painting political stuff, and I submitted some political stuff, and I got an email from Mike, and he said, "Dude, I really like this. Keep up what you're doing, and don't be a stranger." And so that was it.
You didn't know Mike before that?
No.
Oh, cool. Okay. It's weird because, when you go to Shockbox, there are a lot. I mean, now there's so many people coming into Shockbox, even like internationally, but and across the country. But, when I go there and I see regulars like you or like Paul Rustan, people like that, I'm like, oh, you must be a local guy. Because I thought you were a local guy this whole time. And I just found out today you're in the Valley like me.
Well, I'm kind of the stray cat. Shockbox put out like a bowl of food for me. And I kept and they kept me around. It's wonderful.
Just kept showing up.
Well, but right, because every time Shockbox would have a show, it would be somehow inspirational, and it would help me to take my art into a direction with some direction. I mean, it was like a an outside director saying, and then I could also see a bunch of other artists and what their work was, and I could up my game, and so it was really, instead of being bitter toward the art world, I found a small piece of the art world that I could just embrace and love and enjoy with no bitterness. And so it's been wonderful.
That's so rare too, isn't it? In the art world, especially. I mean, in this contemporary climate too, but like in the art world specifically, it's like that on steroids.
Well, and what's really rare is I wasn't trying for anything. Like I just wanted my painting to be in a group show, and that I was happy with that. I'm happy just painting. Mm-hmm. And so things just organically unfolded and just happened. It was just it was something that the universe created. It wasn't anything that was forced, and it's a wonderful thing.
Well, what's great about that, and I was thinking about this when we were talking earlier, it is one of those things that every artist kind of strives to do, but kind of fails at. Because I believe a lot of artists are really trying to force the action so much. Like, look at me on social media, look at me here. This is my work. They're trying to create some sort of a persona. And I think what you did is so organic. And it's just like you kind of came in under the radar, and everybody's just kind of, oh, okay, Daniel, like I see your work, and you just kept showing up, and then all of a sudden you're gaining momentum, which takes me into this. What just happened with you on Artsy and Instagram? You like just blew up overnight.
Well, algorithms are funny things.
Mm-hmm.
Artsy algorithm somehow got a hold of me, and I got on some sort of email blast, like, check out the new works by Daniel Hustwit. And I got a call from, and I don't know how the algorithm works, but what you said earlier was really right on. Artists today, we spend way too much time promoting ourselves.
Yeah.
And the promotion gets in the way of the actual creation. I mean, if we spent half the time, instead of, on being on social media, go to a museum or study every bit of, if you're a sculptor, study every bit of sculpture that you can find.
Yeah.
Forget social media. But there's this, there was something I read on social media that said, the artists from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, they spent about 75% of their time on sex, drugs, rock and roll, and then like 5% on sleep, and then the rest on creating art.
Yeah. Yeah.
But today, the artists spend, instead of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, they're spending 85% of their time on social media and 15% on creation of art.
Yeah, you're not feeding your mind, your soul, your creativity. You're really kind of just, I don't know. It's there's this weird phenomenon recently. I heard that everybody's starting to look the same on social media. Did you hear this? Like, because there's this whole Kardashian phenomenon. There's what everybody perceives to be, beautiful nowadays, and everybody's kind of trying to fit into that. And then there's filters. So there's this weird thing happening almost with evolution where people are all starting to kind of look the same. And I feel that way with art as well. I think we just kind of, if all you're seeing is social media, and you're absolutely right. I'm lucky that I'm old enough to be here before social media, before smartphones. I developed my personality before that. But I'm also glad that I know technology a bit, because it is what's going to take us into the new era. But I think if you lose that completely, art's going to suffer. Everything's going to suffer. Culture's going to suffer. And you're spot on. Like, people used to go to studios. People used to, go see their friends in studios, see what's on the easel, what's fresh off the easel, not what somebody has curated on their Instagram profile or on TikTok or something. So yeah, that's a lost art. And I'm glad to see that people like you, and I would like to think myself too, are still doing that kind of stuff. And by the way, yeah, I was the same way, man. I didn't have any artist friends when I first started out in LA. I was just doing I had musician friends, I had actor friends, I was reading, I had writer friends, I was going out, I was drinking all the time, I was going to concerts, I was going to, that's how I fed myself. And then it came out in my art, and I'm feel like I'm all the better for it. I mean, I know there's some dark times in there too, but that was a lot. But do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, the first line, if you go to the Diarealism show, and on the wall, it's art eats itself.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been, that's what we've really been doing. We're, along with the algorithms, we're just consuming ourselves. And then we're kind of spewing out what we've just consumed. And instead of, you could distill something into its essence, and it makes it powerful. A distillation is something incredible. That's what we're striving for. Yes. But the opposite of that is dilution. When you dilute something, you're not distilling it into its strongest form. You're just kind of spreading out wide ranges of crap.
Yeah.
And that's what, when I see a lot of, like, you're talking about art that needs an explanation.
Yes.
That's, if you, in the Pepto-Bismolism part of the Diarealism show, the explanations next to the art.
Yep.
Explanations.
Well, and that's what the thing, you're making fun of that. I loved that about that.
Yeah, because the story, I shouldn't have to tell the story. I'm into stories, but the story should be told not with words, but with the art itself. And if you use words to help out your art, then it's almost like a novelist who needs illustrations to help out his novel.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Has ever put an illustration in a novel? The illustration is supposed to happen in your mind. And so for art, the story is supposed to happen in your mind. It's not, you're not supposed to be telling the what the story is. It happen in your mind.
And also if you do that too much, you're taking away the viewer's own interpretation of it. Like, I want people to see something in their work and connect with it and be like, oh yeah, this is my experience with the work. Not like, okay, you've told me exactly what this is. Now I don't have my own interpretation. It's like music. Everybody can hear the same lyrics, but they might relate it to some story, a breakup that they had in their past, and that becomes even more powerful for them. I agree. There needs to be like a hook in, but then you got to allow enough space for other people to invest their own experience into it.
Well, and the thing about music, look at the big difference. If you look at the music world, the musician doesn't have to have his story is not important, or her story is not important. The music is important, not the ethnicity of the musician, not the gender of the musician, not the sexual orientation of the musician. It's strictly the music that's important. But with art, for some reason, we think of the artist's story seems to be the most important thing. Oh, yes, this artist is a ex-heroin addict living on the streets, and therefore his art is somehow better than the doctor from Johns Hopkins who was a heroin addict not living on the streets.
I completely agree. It's not better, or maybe it's just something that people latch into because it's different. It's different from their experience. It's something that they can't relate to as much.
They think that the story of the artist somehow infuses the art with the magical power. Art should be magic, but that magic shouldn't come from the curator or the art advisor writing something on a wall to try and create that magic. And that's really what the problem has been. Writers are lazy. The art journalist community is more focused on public relations and some sort of interesting story about an artist than they are confronting the art or lack of the art on the wall. Yeah. They're really interested also in like, oh, how much they want a large price tag. Price tags are the whole thing. It's like the price tag drives the cultural value of the art. The only way art has cultural value, it's not about the art. It's what does it sell for? What is the price tag?
Well, in the art market, yes. I would say from a viewer's standpoint, if you're going in and getting something out of it, you're hanging it on your wall. I would say no, unless you're a billionaire and you're trying to have status by having a big, $100 million painting on your wall.
And the only artists that really get viewed, I mean, there are millions of artists.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
Are the 10 or 15 or whatever, the few that where their work has been infused with monetary value.
Well, yeah, because they've got the machine behind them, like you're saying.
And that's it. Once they have monetary value equated with their work, then suddenly they have cultural significance, and that's how they're getting cultural significance now. And so, but you get from that, you get the manipulation of like auction prices and deals with artists that are just getting out of their master's program. You can manipulate their auction market. It's so nefarious what's going on. It has nothing to do with quality most of the time, and it has more to do with money and manipulation.
Well, and that's what I love about your story. And it's funny, we're going to use this as a segue to get into your past a little bit. And we'll talk about the show more too. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people like me, for example, I did actually go to school and I studied, theater and fine art and stuff like that, but I didn't go to an MFA program. I didn't have anybody who plugged me into the art world afterwards. I had to do it myself. I had to scrape and build my own reputation. And then, you can get into the whole story of like, well, yeah, do you need to brand yourself now as an artist? I would argue that in most cases nowadays with the social media climate, you kind of have to brand yourself a little bit. I'm not saying you have to be phony about it, but you do have to have you have a recognizable style. When I see your pieces, I'm like, I know it's Daniel's. And that's in and of itself is branding. You're not going out there and creating the story and be like, hey, look at me, I'm the top hat artist, but you can see your work. You know what a Daniel Hustwit piece is just by looking at it on Instagram, by seeing it for like a split second. And I think that's powerful. And that's the biggest compliment you can ever give an artist.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I hope when you see my next one, you think that also.
Wait, you talking about your next show?
My next painting. I'm always going next painting. There's right downstairs in my studio right now. I'm working on something that might be completely different, but it's got some. It's really pretty interesting. It was inspired by the next show coming up at Shockbox, the next open call you guys put out.
Oh yeah, finger licking good. Finger licking good.
Gave me a great idea.
I guess that's not what I'm saying either. It's not that you have to, once you have that style, that's another thing that you're fed by the art world, is like, you have to have one style and then you just stick to that style and you keep regurgitating it until you don't even care about your life anymore. No, I don't agree with that. I think you have to follow your passion, but if it's coming from you and it's authentic, you're still going to see Daniel in that piece.
You do have a point about branding though. You have to Wyland. I expect to see whales and water from Wyland.
Yeah,
and
right.
If he's painting a clown, I'm not into it.
Clown on a whale?
Or yeah, okay. and again, but if he did that, it would almost cheapen what he's done with his whole other body of work. He's the guy, the king of branding, I think.
Yeah.
He took a talent level that is probably admittedly limited.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a great artist. Objectively, he's not an objectively great artist, but he is the best brand conceiver of all time. He took a name that no one else took. He owns it and dominates it and mainstreams it. And he's one of the richest living artists.
Yeah. And that's a skill, right? I mean, that's a skill that you can develop. And, some people, a lot of artists, they have like a day job, right? They have something they don't have to really necessarily worry about paying a mortgage or paying the rent. I know you had a career, you still have a career, and maybe that's not as much of a concern. But for some artists who actually are trying to scrape by and actually make a living off of their art, that's where the branding comes in. I can understand people getting into the story a bit because they have to sell themselves a little bit. They want to pull themselves either out of poverty or quit their day job or whatever, make some more money on the side. But I want to get into the Daniel Hustwit origin story. So tell us a little bit about your origins and how that kind of developed into art, like when you started art in that process.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky. I'm 58 years old, and I've been a criminal defense attorney here in Los Angeles for the last 30 plus years.
Oh, wow.
Since 1992.
1992. Wow.
And so it's been 32 years. And so for me, I don't have to rely on art in any way to bring in even a penny.
Yeah.
And that makes me lucky and it makes my art much more fun to create. But I mean, when I was still
there's freedom with that, right?
It allows me to separate art from business completely.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry about what's going to sell, what's not going to sell. Should I paint this if it's going to sell? Should I not? I don't have to have that worry at all.
Yeah. You don't have to have that worry yet.
I started at UCLA.
If the machine gets behind you, Daniel, they're going to start trying to control what you create, though.
I would love any machine. I welcome any machine getting behind. That would be phenomenal.
Machine. Okay, sorry, but I interrupted you.
No, so I was just saying before I went to law school, I went to UCLA, and there I was doing political cartoons and comic strips.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
I was drawing portraits of family members before that in high school and before. My high school, which was in Connecticut, it's one of the great, I think, high schools anywhere. It's called Norwich Free Academy, NFA.
Mm-hmm.
You have a museum on the campus, the Slater Museum. Inside this museum is every cast plaster casts, original plaster casts from the originals, first generation from the 1800s of Greek and Roman antique sculpture.
Oh, really?
So I got to hang out in my senior year of high school. I was I guess not a guard, not even a docent, but I got to have my class, just my senior study class, sitting in the museum sketching all of these sculptures.
Oh, man.
And it was the most tremendous. I mean, so I've really enjoyed I've always had a deep love for art, and I've always been drawing and sketching, but the reality had to set in sometime, and I had to make a living because I knew that art wouldn't give me the kind of lifestyle that I would hope that I want.
Yeah. Take it from me. I will concur.
But now, after, working for 3 decades, my wife still is a lawyer. My wife is an immigration attorney, one of the top in LA.
Oh, wow.
Now I get to focus on just my art all the time, what direction it's going. I read art reviews. My favorite is the Manhattan Art Review.
Uh-huh.
Sean Tatal, the Critics Corner. He's tremendous.
Yeah.
Links to all the galleries in Manhattan. So I get to really get exposed to the West Coast and the East Coast. And I'm telling you, the East Coast right now, I think, sucks. We're way cooler here on the West Coast. And
I'm nodding. You can't see this if you're listening, but I'm nodding.
Our art is just way more cutting edge. It's way more, it's real.
It flipped because that has not been the case, throughout American art history.
Right. But you can check it yourselves. Go check out every single, and you can go online and see them, but go look at every new show. And it's like, they're all carbon copies of the next. It's almost like there's no passion anymore.
It parallels what you're seeing on social media. It's like, what can I immediately get out there that's easily digestible by the general populace, right?
And that's why, when you say digestible, that's really what diarealism is kind of about. It's, art as food, but we're not hungry for art. So we're hungry for entertainment. And that's really, so my paintings kind of always try to portray the tension between art and entertainment. Artists are not entertainers, but many of them now try to be entertainers to make their show more entertaining. So they'll have a band playing in their show, or a poetry reading, or it's always something else. And so I try to show the tension between entertainment and art, and how entertainment is kind of swallowing up art, because there's the piece of the pie for true art is smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah.
Well, you're doing this great blend of the masters. Like I said, like you have an Anthony Hopkins as Francis Bacon painting, right? Like those old screaming popes that Francis Bacon used to do. It's kind of
Francis Bacon was doing takeoffs on Pope Innocent X by Velasquez.
Yeah.
And I went right back to Velasquez and took his and fully paint, like Bacon's versions were all very wild and ghoulish and abstract and fun, and he was really experimental.
Yeah.
He was trying to take the Velasquez composition, which is considered one of the great compositions in all of art history. And Bacon was trying to find the magic in that composition. He did so many different experiments with it. And I love them all. So, I took both of those artists and then I kind of took it one notch beyond Bacon back to reality.
Yep.
And then
infused with pop culture.
Yeah. And so it's, I'm trying to do something different out there. I'm trying to do something that you haven't seen, every time you go online and look at art. I'm just trying to to advance the ball in art.
Yeah. Well, you've done something really interesting. A couple things. First of all, you're talking about it's funny how artists almost need to have a gimmick now to sell their show or have something, a performative aspect of it. In a weird way, you've managed to capture that in the art. The art is very entertaining. It's almost because you are infusing pop culture that people recognize, but you've done it in a way that's also spoon feeding fine art and art history to people. Like, I think a lot of people will go to your show and they won't understand the Caravaggio references and things like that. But there's that element for the art connoisseur, but there's also spoon feeding art to people who just know the pop culture, the Instagram generation. But you've also done it in a way that's kind of like irreverent too. And I just love it. There's so much. I mean, you could really talk for hours about your show, and that's why it was so interesting to me. And word has it that I might now be an actual collector of your work.
Well, you were entertained. You were.
Are you not entertained?
But you were right. I really try to get the entertainment in the art.
Yeah, it speaks for itself.
That's where it should be, and it shouldn't just be entertaining, but it should also be entertaining. That's part of what I'm really trying to get. You shouldn't have to look at a TV screen or a movie screen or a computer screen to be entertained. You can also look at a painting and be entertained.
I completely agree. I love it. And the irony, of course, is that you are taking some of the imagery from a screen, though, right?
Right.
from our past, not the new screens, but like, let's talk a little bit about some of the favorite pieces in the show. I mean, you've got the Beverly Hillbillies in there. You've got What You Talking About, Willis. Sorry, what's the name of the show?
Different Strokes.
Different Strokes. Thank you. Different Strokes. I just blanked on it. You've got It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You've got Anthony Hopkins in there. You've got Cheech. You've got Michael Jackson. Living Color. Wanda. Yeah.
There's Taylor Swift.
Oh, yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Zendaya,
of course. Yep. And you've got Wednesday from the
right. There's Jenna Ortega.
Yes, Jenna Ortega, who's also very hot right now.
Oh, but they're all playing roles. They're entertainers in some way. They're either playing a version of themselves, a version of their own kind of reality.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing a totally different character. Even the artists that I painted, like the Caravaggio.
Yeah.
That's a self-portrait of Caravaggio that he painted himself as the head of Medusa. And then he decided to put them all on the shield of Athena.
Yeah.
So Caravaggio is kind of screwing around with people also.
Ahead of his time, for sure.
And there's the Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's the original of that one is an Italian artist, Francisco Campi.
Yeah. I was trying to place that painting, so thank you. Yeah,
it's called the Ricotta Eaters.
Mm-hmm.
The Ricotta Eaters. I think it's from 1585, and Campi included himself in that also. They were the Commedia dell'arte characters.
Yes, I'm an old theater major. I know Commedia dell'arte, sure.
And the artist, portrayed himself as the Harlequina. The Harlequin.
Mm-hmm.
So he portrayed himself as a character, but also as the clown, as the entertainer.
What was the characters with the big noses in Commedia dell'arte? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. I don't know what each one in Commedia dell'arte, they had there was El Doctore, there was the Capitan. They were all some sort of archetype.
Yes, they were.
Original Saturday Night Live. But when they did the opera masks, I know what you're talking about, those nose masks.
Yes, they were very elongated. Yep.
I don't know which characters did that or if audience members were part of that as well.
Yeah, I can't remember. I'll have to look it up later. But what are a couple of your favorite pieces in the show? I want to whet people's appetite because we're going to put links to the show on Artsy so you can see the actual show on Artsy and you can buy a piece if you want, which I highly recommend because first of all, the art is amazing. And you did something which I always tell artists to do, which is you priced your work to sell. And I'm not saying you did that because you were like desperate to sell, but you made the work accessible for people to buy as well, which is something that you should be doing, I think, especially when you're, getting into your shows. I mean, I know you've done some stuff with La Luz de Jesus and Shockbox, but this was your first major solo show, correct?
Yeah, this is my only solo show. I've had group shows all over the place. I've been in all kinds of shows all over the country, and
Yeah.
this is my first solo show.
But you really price these things well. I mean, there are some good prices in there too, but you made it accessible for some people to collect your work. So I highly recommend people looking at the show notes, going to Artsy, checking out Shockbox, and picking up a piece if you want. And what's your Instagram, just so people know?
Instagram is my name, Daniel Hustwit. That's it. Just Daniel Hustwit, Hustwit.
Yeah.
About
you can grow your Instagram even more.
Yeah. For artists who are thinking about pricing their work, a lot of us think about our paintings the same way we'd think about a puppy, a service dog puppy that we're training. And once you train that service dog puppy, you don't want to give it away to the family, the seeing eye dog. You don't want to get rid of it. I know you love the puppy.
Yep.
Whether the puppy is you're charging it, just let the puppy go. Let people own the puppy. You don't have to pay for your materials. You're not going to get paid for your hourly rate.
There will be more puppies.
Let people buy the paintings. And you're right, Preston. I tried to, there are some higher prices and some lower, but I did set a good price range.
Mm-hmm.
So far out of the 27 paintings, now 11 of them have sold.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's amazing.
So it's been a really good show for sales.
And it's still going.
And it's still going until March 23rd.
Yeah, that's great. So that's the other thing. If you get a chance to see the show in person, I highly recommend it. Some shows you can really get away with seeing online, but this is one of those ones that you just got to be there. You got to be there to really absorb it. And you can spend a lot of time in this gallery. It's not one of those shows that you just breeze through. Oh, okay. You really want to take your time with each piece. I really enjoyed it. It's like I said, it's one of my favorite shows I've seen at Shockbox and in recent years. So check it out. But tell us about a couple paintings that you maybe want to highlight or some of your favorites.
All right. Well, I'll tell you the one that was the biggest nightmare to paint.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know if it's my favorite or my least favorite, but there's a Norman Rockwell painting that I did. It's the original Rockwell is Freedom from Want. And he painted that in 1943 as part of the war bond drive. He painted 4 of those, and it was always designed. Everything that Rockwell ever painted was designed for reproduction. It was always designed to be seen as reproduced. So I painted this one actual size, but I had to get the color scheme correct. I had 4 different copies of Rockwell, each one reproduced in a different color palette. And And the painting itself, it's the Thanksgiving table painting, and it has 12. Mine has 12 portraits, and 9 of them had to look exactly like Rockwell's, and so it was just a nightmare to paint. But it was worth the nightmare. It was one of those paintings that I'm really happy with. It's beautiful to look at.
And who's the centerpiece?
The centerpiece is Gary Coleman.
Yep.
I loved Gary growing up. It was an interesting story that he had, and that's why. The people, the mother and father, or the grandfather and grandmother, are the couple from the 1980 movie Motel Hell.
Oh.
They were motel owners who were also the owners of Uncle Vincent's Sausage Company. And Uncle Vincent would bury humans that he captured in the motel into the ground and then harvest them and make sausage out of them. And
oh, wow.
A great classic movie.
How do I not know this? I'm like a big movie buff. Wow. I have to check this out.
It's it's a painting that it's got Motel Hell. It's got different strokes. It's got Norman Rockwell. It's as a painting can get.
That's amazing. It's a fusion.
And it's really subversive because you can't really, when you approach, it's just, hopefully you'll see it either in person or on Artsy and enjoy it.
It's a great piece. I love that piece. And that's still available for sale, correct?
Yeah, that's an expensive one.
That's an expensive one. And you can see why when you see the piece even on Artsy or in person. Yeah, it is subversive. And it's one of those pieces, which I love about your show too. It's one of those pieces that people can kind of inject their own meaning into it. Like I could definitely see somebody going into that going like, oh, this is a commentary on racism, right? But it's not necessarily a commentary on racism. But that's what's so beautiful about that piece is it lets you breathe and kind of have your own interpretation of it.
I had a friend tell me that you could be an ultra liberal who loves that painting because of the anti-racist, or you could be a member of the KKK.
Oh,
and
yeah.
think the opposite.
Definitely.
And that's why let the viewer decide. Let the viewer enjoy what it is an American. It's something that's, I think, it's a painting of America. And it's really it's a painting about art today.
Yes. And you have a few other, that's not the only suspended or severed head in your pieces. You've got Beverly Hillbillies. You've got Married with Children. I'm just trying to think of some of the ones off the top of my head. You've got Cheech Marin. Who am I missing?
Oh, there's Brad Pitt.
Severed. Yep. Another head. Yeah.
Brad Pitt.
Taylor Swift. Well, Taylor Swift is kind of in a mirror, correct?
No, she's on it. She's in a cake, a glass.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah.
And she's on a countertop. She's on a bedroom, a dresser top.
Yes. And then, of course, you've got the character Wanda, played by Jamie Foxx, also in a bubblegum machine. That's another one that I almost bought.
I love that one too.
I love that piece. The colors in that piece are great too. Yeah, it's just a wonderful, well thought out. And this is hang on, let's pause for garbage truck going by. Okay, so that's gone. What were we talking about?
You were talking Jamie Foxx and Wanda and the bubblegum machine.
Jamie Foxx and the colors really pops. Oh, what I was going to say was Mike and I talk about this a lot, and Mike talks about this a lot specifically with Shockbox and people who are doing solo shows. And it's something you did really well. Not only did you pretty much keep most of the pieces silent. I know you teased out a tiny bit, but most of the work was done in the shadows, and most of the work, it was very well thought out. And by thought out, I don't mean over intellectualized what we're talking about, but it had a cohesive structure to it. There's a story behind it. There's a theme to it. There's multiple themes to it. It's entertaining. It's fun. It just has all of these pieces wrapped into one. So for anybody wondering how to put on a really good solo show, go in and check this show out and, digest that. Not just the obvious digestion of the meatballs that you have in the background, but digest what Daniel is actually doing with this show, because it's pretty powerful and entertaining at the same time.
Oh, that's really sweet of you. Thank you so much, Preston. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And look, I don't know, I'm not sure how far we are in this, but I did want to talk a little bit about, because we did do your origin story a little. So you were a criminal defense attorney. Are you still practicing?
Yes, I have my license. I'll practice until I'm dead, but I'm not, the last case that I took was a very stressful case, and I'm not looking forward to the next case. It was a post-conviction case, and it took me 4 years to finally resolve the case. So,
wow.
I'm not looking forward to another level of stress that high.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine. We talked about this at the show a little bit too, how there must be just a lot of pressure put on. I mean, not only just the work itself, it's got to be very demanding, but having somebody's fate rest in your hands has got to be very daunting.
This particular case, I was exposed to 23 or 24 years ago. His family, my client, his family contacted me then after he had lost his trial, and they asked me to do an appeal and to do a motion for new trial, both of which I did 20 some years ago, but were unsuccessful. And he ended up, his conviction was resulted in him serving having to serve a 65-year to life sentence.
Oh my God. Wow.
And we started here in California. The laws changed in 2019, the law of murder was modified, and the elements of murder were redefined in certain specific ways that I thought might help this person's case.
Yeah.
And 4 years later, he has been released, and he is
Oh, wow.
free man, and he
That's great.
new lease on life. And justice was definitely served in this case.
Oh, that's amazing. So it can be rewarding, but yeah, well, first of all, it's got to be tough to deal with. I don't know if you want to talk at all about, we can cut this out or not, but you and I both have a history with hitting the bottle a little bit, as well as some other people in Shockbox. We can talk about that if we want. We don't have to.
I'm fine with that. I was a complete degenerate. Probably
Okay.
you could still call me a degenerate, but in terms of drinking, I was a very big fan of Jack Daniels.
Oh, yeah.
All of the Jack Daniels iterations, Gentleman Jack, especially Single Barrel Jack.
Yes.
And I reached a point in my I was drinking.
I was an Irish whiskey guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Bushmills.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That's why I'll take Jack Daniels all day, any day. But it started in college, and it started to creep through in law school. I always drank and had fun. But when I got in my 40s, I started to drink. I thought, it was so gradual. Alcoholism is a gradual thing, I believe. And it shifts over at some point from fun and partying all the time to getting blackout drunk every day.
Yeah. It gets on top of you.
That was the point I reached. I was getting blackout drunk every day, and it wasn't fair to my wife, and I would have killed somebody. I was driving drunk home from the bar in a blackout. I didn't know how to get from point A to point B a lot of times. I got there somehow, but I'd wake up and say, how did I get here?
And that's a common story, and I relate to that too, man. There's so many times where I'm like, oh, I'm so lucky that this turned out the way that it did. And same thing with my wife. It's funny. For me, it was the 30s. I hit my 30s. You're right. It's a gradual thing. It's fun in college. I was like in a punk band. I was the lead singer. We drank a lot at shows. We drank in college. I was an artist. I was a waiter. We would all go out drinking after shifts, and it was great for a while. It was a lot of fun. A lot of times I blew off a lot of steam, and then you're right. It just gets on top of you at some point. It's like, for me, it was like my body just started to reject it. There's a school of thought now that, because we have more bacteria and more bacterial DNA in our body than we do actual cells. And there's a theory that our bacteria are actually making most of our decisions for us before we do. And I find that with the microbiome and bacteria, you feed them something and they want more. And I almost feel like at some point with people who have an addiction problem or alcoholism, it's like the bacteria just goes, nope, this is what we want. This is what we want. Give it to us. We won't settle for less. And then almost even the anticipation of drinking gets you drunk before you even start. It's crazy.
Well, even today, I like they used to be called, when I was a kid, the $100,000 bar, a candy bar. Now it's called the $100,000 bar.
$100,000, yeah, for sure.
And I can reach over here into my kitchen, and I have an entire case of $100,000 bars. One isn't enough. I need 36 bars. 5 of these things a day because my microbiome is demanding them.
I'm telling you, it's the microbiome.
I agree. Well, I've got the same with caramel.
Fuckers,
I go through these stages, and the microbiome does demand. You must listen to it.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. If anybody's interested, just look up some biohacking stuff. You'll figure it out. Well, okay. And then let's make a final connection here with that. So I'm always interested in making connections with people, with artists and their work. How much of that, maybe the alcohol, maybe the being a criminal defense attorney, how much of that fed into your work, and in what way? And maybe it didn't. Maybe it was an escape from the work, but how much of that feeds into what you do and the themes of what you do, maybe the work ethic, whatever connection you make?
Well, I know that the paintings, after I stopped drinking I still drink beer. I'll have a couple beers with sushi, or a glass of wine with dinner. I'm what's called Los Angeles or California sober. I smoke weed every day.
Yeah.
and I'll drink a couple beers and wines. That's California sober.
But you don't hit the jack anymore.
No more Jack. In fact, I could tell a story, but it involves shitting myself. So I'll avoid telling.
We'll leave that for round 2.
This episode is brought to you by FX's Shogun, the official podcast. Each week, host Emily Yoshida is joined by the creators, cast, and crew in this exclusive companion podcast. They dive deep into the twists and turns of the plot, go behind the scenes, and explore the real-life history that informed the limited series based on James Clavell's best-selling novel. Search FX's Shogun wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, that's right. But my paintings, since I stopped drinking, have become tighter and cleaner and smarter.
Yeah.
My drunken paintings, I thought were decent also, but they were certainly not like I'm painting now. The lack of Jack Daniels, the lack of being blackout drunk has really helped my execution of my art. I have more patience in execution now than I had before. I was so fast. There's no need to be fast in a painting. It needs to let it tell you how long it's going to take. Yeah. And being drunk, I wasn't listening to anything.
Right.
That's, I think, the biggest difference.
When you're almost trying to, I understand that too. For me, it was more, I used alcohol as like a reward for when I finished a painting. I would start cracking open some alcohol when I was getting close to the end. Cause I used to paint, pop culture, pop surrealism stuff. I told you there's some stuff that I see in your work that reminds me a little bit of what I used to do. I think you've taken that further and to another level, which is great. But that was me. I would get to a place where I was kind of getting happy with it. And then I'd be like, all right, I'm ready to hit the ball a little bit. And then it was kind of magical after you were done with the painting. I just painted for 14 hours straight, and then I would get done and I would open the bottle and it was just like this magical moment. But I'm interested to hear, as somebody who used to kind of have a similar practice with that, do you find that for me at least, maybe this is a leading question, but for me, I can kind of revisit that, whatever the pain I was going through when I was drinking, because there was definitely some pain and some trauma in there. Whatever I was doing and accessing in those moments, I can now kind of revisit that as like a sober person and tap into that and use that in the studio without hitting the bottle. Is that something that resonates with you or no?
Tapping into it's, I try to, maybe it's the opposite, because
Okay.
when I was drinking, like there was a bar called Tiny's in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And Tiny's had paintings on the wall of clowns and nudes. That was it. It's a nude.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll remember how much fun I had painting a nude for Tiny's.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun going out drinking and going out to the bars that I go through avoidance and denial, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I can't put myself back there because I wouldn't, like right now, I could go, the bars are going to open in about an hour. And so I don't want to, I can't put myself mentally there.
Yeah.
At all. And when I'm painting, it's I think you were right when you said maybe an escape. It's the opposite. Like I'm in a hold when I'm painting.
Cool.
I often struggle with the thought of how much fun I could have, but I'm 58 and at some point I have to grow up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. That's the hardest part is it's really the memories of it, the fun that you had and just knowing, oh, well, it's just a little short drive away. But you're right. I think being on the other side of it, I wouldn't trade it now for the world, but it is tempting from time to time for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, so Daniel, this has been fun. I'm glad you got on the podcast. I'm glad we got a little visit from Miss X at the beginning. Once again, not to beat a dead horse, but I highly recommend seeing Daniel's show at Shockbox. You can find it in the show notes. You can find it on Artsy in the show notes. Check it out. Buy a piece if you want. Some of the pieces are very affordable. I always call it the gateway drug. You gave a couple gateway drugs in there for people. Somebody who wants to collect, So that's great. And then if you want to pick up the Different Strokes piece, highly recommend that too. Is there anything you want to talk about, feel like we left out, you want to leave the audience with?
mention this podcast, you get half off.
Oh, there you go. You heard it here first. We got a hot take. So mention the living artist and you get half off. Okay. I love it. Great. You feel good about what we talked about?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Preston.
Oh yeah.
This is great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for showing up so quickly too. I love it. I love these spur of the moment conversations. They're almost better than the planned ones. So everybody check out Daniel, and I'm going to stop recording now, but thanks again, man. This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.